Welcome everybody to the Minchas Chinuch shir, and tonight we're going to be doing mitzvah shin lamed vav on the advertising material. I call it real estate deals, but more accurately I should have called it kinyanim, means of acquisitions. Okay, before I get started, as usual, I want to thank our video partners of TorahAnytime.com for their making this year available to those who can't attend in person over the World Wide Web. Yeh maskurtem kvula, me'em Hashem, and that you have tremendous hatzlacha in all their endeavors to be meifetz Torah and to be Mekar Hashem Shemayim.
Amen.
And as always, we are dedicating the Torah that we learned tonight in this year to the Refuah Shleima of Tzar Yecheved Bas Chana Masha. Okay. We're not even going to be doing any chinuch at all tonight. It's rather lengthy. You can see by the length of your handout. It's a 6-page handout, and it's pretty evenly distributed between Sefer Chinuch and Minchas Chinuch. And the reason for that is because the mitzvah, as after a long perambulation, I believe the word is it's called, he finally brings it in for a landing, so to speak, to Sefer Chinuch. And he more or less says that the mitzvah that we're talking about here is a mitzvah that's ecclesiastical. By that, I mean to say, we know that among the 630 mitzvahs of the Torah, there are those that have become incumbent upon individuals. There are those that are incumbent on the nation as a whole. There are those that are incumbent on certain segments of the population. There are certain mitzvahs that only apply to the Levium, others that only apply to the Kohanim, others only apply to men, others only apply to women, and so on. So basically, after a long, like I said, we'll call it a stream of consciousness, if you will, talking about a lot of varied dinim, he comes down to on the pasuk that's going to be appearing in a parsha 2 weeks hence. The psukim that he's dealing with are basically a mitzvah incumbent upon Bezdin, incumbent upon the Jewish ecclesiastical institutions, all right, to make sure that civil law pertains when it comes to acquisitions, buying, selling, gifting, renting, and so on. All right. So a lot of different means of acquisitions, but I'm not totally guilty of a lack of truth in advertising, because I don't think we're going to have more time tonight than to deal with the acquisitions that apply to real property, to real estate. Okay, these are sugyas that appear in Masechtas Kedushin, in Masechtas Gittin, in Bava Basra, in Bava Metzia, and scattered elsewhere throughout Shas. Especially when it comes to shtaris, especially when it comes to contract law, it's very nuanced, it's very complex. But suffice it to say that there are many, many different categories of things, and as shocking as this is going to sound, even people, okay, that can be acquired by different means. Forgive me for lapsing into Hebrew for a moment, but that I mean to say is a means of acquisition that might work for movable property might not work for real property, and vice versa. A means of acquisition that might effectuate a marriage may not be able to effectuate a divorce. A means of acquisition for which the name, the semantic, is the same. Chazaka, for example, chazaka is something that works in real property, in real estate, and it works in, getting really politically incorrect here tonight, the acquisition of slaves as well, right? But how chazaka is applied in these two different things is totally different. What you would do in order to acquire a piece of agricultural property might not also translate in terms of chazaka into how you would acquire a piece of commercial property in a modern service economy. All right, so obviously these are shasugas. Each one has whole chapters of the Talmud devoted to it. What we always try to do in Minchas Chinuch is to get, as they say in Yiddish, a lek and a shmek, some kind of a taste, some kind of an aroma, some kind of a feel for what the sugya is. And in particular, the genius of the Minchas Chinuch is to zero in on particularly delicious tidbits of chakiras, of machlokas rishonim, of points in Talmudic theory that allow you to look at a thing from multiple angles. So without further ado, let's launch. Okay, you may have noticed that your handout was open to page 2. For those of you who are following along in TorahAnytime.com, for this Shir Minchas Chinuch, we always use the new Machon Yerushalayim 3-volume print. We are in Chelik Beis, and the mitzvah, which this is uniform in all prints of the Sefer Chinuch and Minchas Chinuch, the mitzvah is mitzvah Shin Lamed Vav, but the Machon Yerushalayim print, mitzvah Shin Lamed Vav, starts in the second Chelik of the set on page Tuf Kuf Yud Ches, but we're beginning tonight on page Tuf Kuf Yud Tes. Now, the poskim enumerate the various way in which real property is acquired, and they are 4 in total. Okay? Kesef, shtar, chazaka, and kinyan suda. Translation. Kesef means money. Shtar means contract. Chazaka means literally strength, but in this application it means demonstration of ownership. And kinyan suda means a handkerchief, which is a symbolic form of barter. We're not going to get to all 4 tonight. And what I really want to concentrate tonight is on kinyan kesef, money as a means of acquiring real estate. However, by way of contrast, we're going to start with just a very, very basic intro into kinyan shtar, into the way a contract or a document can be used in order to acquire real property in Torah law. Okay, so take a look, like I said, on the second page of your handout, Tuf Kuf Yud Tes. We're not looking at the Chinuch at all tonight. This is the paragraph that I've headed with the number 7 in the Minchas Chinuch. Okay, right side of the page, basically the second paragraph. Shtar. Okay? Contracts. Hamocher onosen b'matana karka. Whether you're selling or gifting real estate. Right? Not every real estate deal has to be a sale. There can be gifts, there can be foreclosures, there can be inheritances. There's a lot of different ways that real estate can transfer title. Right? So he's talking to here about sales and gifts. The Kosovlo, and he wrote to him. Okay, who's the he and who's the him? The seller and the buyer, the giver and the receiver. Okay? Kosovlo, ben al haniyar o al acheres, whether he wrote it to him on paper. Okay, paper is almost a pejorative when used by the Talmud and even Talmudically based poskim, because paper is not parchment. Okay, parchment is something that has some value, some workmanship, and some durability. Whereas paper is something terrible, erasable, losable. Not a lot of thought or art or craft went into the manufacturing of paper, comparatively speaking, compared to parchment, vellum as it's called in English, where hides have to be tanned and so on and so forth. It's a whole laborious process to produce parchment. Okay? Cheres is a pottery shard. Terracotta, unglazed. That's cheres. Again, something very crumbly, something very erasable. Piece of junk. Okay? Nowadays, in our modern industrialized economies, we have junks that come in a lot of different flavors. There's plastic junk and there's paper junk, and we all know from recycling, from sorting our garbage, how many different types of junk there are. But comparatively speaking, this is what we would call junk. The Rambam, quoting the Gemara, says, you could write this document on a leaf. You could tear a leaf off of a tree and write what you have to write. Okay? And the reason why I'm accenting the cheapness of the materials, you ever hear the expression, it's not worth the paper it's written on? Okay? The reason why I'm accenting the cheapness and the basic and utter worthlessness of the actual raw materials that go to make the contract will become apparent partially in a moment and partially within half an hour. Okay. Even though it is worth less than a pruta. Can anyone remember from any of our previous Minchas Chinuch classes the significance of a pruta? Pruta is the name of a coin. It's a denomination of a coin. What is the halachic significance of a pruta? Anybody remember?
It's a small denomination, about a quarter. What did you say it was worth? About a quarter or 50 cents?
It fluctuates according to the price of an ounce of silver.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
I asked for the definition. I asked for the halachic significance of pruta.
What you were saying though about it, along halachic lines, it has not enough value for someone to really care about it. So that if he loses it, he doesn't care because it's back. Something that's an insignificant amount, like it says now.
Okay. In halacha, what determines significance? Well, the people mind losing it or not?
Well, that could be one.
Okay. Would it shock you if I told you that in the Noahide laws, Ben Noach Neherag Al Pachas Mikashav Pruta?
They have a different
If a Noahide steals less than a Shav Pruta, it's a capital offense. So apparently somebody's pressing charges. All right? Somebody got upset over the loss of less than a Shav Pruta. Okay. The point of Shav Pruta is, in a much more generic sense, not limited to a coin itself or to a real estate transaction, Shav Pruta is to monetary law what a kazayas is to solid dietary law, or what a revius is to liquid dietary law. It's one of the shiurim of the Torah. Okay? Shiurim halach l'maishem Sinai. It's pure oral law. We don't have any scriptural specs or descriptions that describe shiurim, but that's what are specs. Every halachic category, right, has to have a baseline definition. There's eating in the Torah. There's certain acts of eating that carry a positive metaphysical spiritual charge, aka what we call mitzvos. Yeah? Matzah and maror the night of Pesach, karbanos when we had a temple. Right? And there are others that carry a negative charge. There are averos of various gradations. You eat pork, it's one kind of an avera. You eat meat milk combinations, another kind of avera. You drink blood, it's a third kind of avera, right? We need definitions. Man, give me definitions. What do you expect? What defines eating? How much? In how much time? Right? Those kind of quantities. Okay, the baseline quantities that define something. There's a mitzvah of sukkah. What defines a sukkah? How many walls does a sukkah have to have? What does the composition of the roof have to be? These are all shiurim. Shiurim means measures, amounts, measures. We even had a 2-week class, if you recall, in Minchas Chinuch, on integrity in business practices, on keeping your weights and measures honest. But that's neither here nor there. Bottom line is, we need a shear. So in Mammon, in all things property related, okay, we're conditioned to think of the shear being a Shav Pruta. Right? Well, business, transactions, title changes are about money. Right? So this is a bit of a head scratcher. How can you affect, if we say that the definition of value, of property, of ownership, the baseline, the bottom line, at least for Jews, I'm not talking about for non-Jews, for Noahites. Yeah? Well, according to Torah law, a Shav Pruta is the baseline definition of what is mammon, of what is property, of what is worth, of what is value. How can you affect the change of title with something that's worth less than Shav Pruta? And that's clear in all the sugyas in the Gemara and in all the Paiskim, that a shtar does not have to be worth a Shav Pruta. Now we have paper money. All of our money are shtaras. All of our money are contracts, and they're really kind of shaky contracts. Okay, but, in the olden days, when I think it was at least in the U.S., if I'm not mistaken, the first paper money appeared in the middle of the Civil War, and I think it was the Confederacy that printed before the Union, if memory serves me correctly. But in the early days, they used to refer to them as banknotes. Which bank? The Federal Bank. And what were the notes? What were the documents? What were the contracts guaranteeing? Gold bullion in Fort Knox, and they moved away from a gold standard, moved away to a silver standard. Now there's no silver standard either. There's no real precious metal backing up our currency at all. All right. Hence the expression, "It's not worth the paper it's written on." All right. If there's no government funds, if there's insufficient funds backing it, all right. Basically, what a dollar bill is, it's a standardized check from the U.S. government. All right. Except that when we write a check, if we don't want to go to jail for kiting checks, we better make sure that they don't bounce. There better be sufficient funds to cover them. Right? For some reason, the U.S. government is exempt, and they don't need sufficient gold or silver or platinum bullion to cover their checks. Right? But certainly, even if it's a check, it's a check that's supposed to represent, some value that can be drawn upon. It's like you take a personal check to the bank, you want to be able to cash it. You take cash to the bank, in theory, you'd want to be able to convert it into silver and gold. Okay? Contracts that are used to affect a change of title do not need minimum monetary value. That's the first thing that we're taking out of this short survey over here. They don't affect the change because they inhere value. That's not how it works. It's not there's a certain minimum amount of value that I want to get, right? Or else I'm not willing to part with my property, with my parcel of real estate. So give me a shtar. I make sure it's worth the paper it's written on. Make sure that the aggregate of the paper or the pottery or the leaf and the ink and all of that all together is worth a shtar pruta. No, not at all. That's not how it works. How shtaris do work, I'm willing to put it on the floor if anyone here has any theories. But it doesn't work because a person got a certain minimal value. That's not what affects the change of ownership, the change of title. Yes?
Yeah, because that's not what's of value in a shtar. What's of value in a shtar is the agreement or the language of the shtar that obligates one party to another party.
Why do you even call that value? A shtar is a physical embodiment of an agreement.
Right.
It's no longer oral. It's no longer merely verbal or oral. It's something written. Okay, but I don't know if that has to be said in terms of value altogether. It's a representation of the will of two people.
It's not necessarily a deed, though.
What?
A deed or proof of ownership. If you have a deed, it's not a contract. It's just the deed is saying I own this property. Here's my name on the deed, and it's officially filed. But it's not a shtar.
Well, maybe it is a shtar, but
Could be.
you're thinking on target. Okay, I'm begging your indulgence. Wait till the end of this paragraph, and we'll come back to your observation of whether or not a shtar is a deed. Okay, let's reiterate a little bit here. Starting from the beginning, somebody who sells or gifts real estate, land, and he wrote to him, the buyer wrote to the seller, or the giver wrote to the gift receiver, the recipient, bein al aniyar, whether it's on paper or al acheres or on terracotta, and like I told you, the Rambam includes, I think, a leaf and one more thing. If you're interested, 1 second, let me look quickly. The Lashon of the Rambam, I know he includes leaf. No, nobody's making any of this up. They're quoting Gemaras here. Yeah, this is Parak Aleph of the laws of selling and buying. Halakha Zayin, 1:7, chapter 1, article 7. Ketzah b'shtar kasach la'anira al-cheretz alay. Yeah, or on the only other example that Minchas Chinuch is saying is a leaf. Okay. Af she'ena shav pruta, even though this whole thing, the background with the ink together, is less than a shav pruta, it's not worth a pruta. Sadai mechur lecha or nesun lecha. My field is hereby sold to you or given to you. Umasur hashtar liyad lekech. Handing that document, when that document leaves the hand of the seller into the hand of the buyer, the deal is done. The buyer is the new owner, or the gift recipient is the new owner. Va'afilu nichta b'loshen avar, macharti and esati, the Maggid Mishnah Shem. Okay, the Maggid Mishnah says, even if you tweak the nusach, the verbiage of the shtar, and the shtar reads, okay, I sold my field to you. I gave my field to you. Okay? That would already be a deed, would it not? Yes or no? You hear the difference in the verbiage? Instead of saying, I am hereby selling my field to you. I'm herewith, I should say. Selling or giving my field to you. You didn't write it that way. No. You said, I sold my field to you. I gave my field to you. Okay. The connotation of such language, of such contractual languages, by some other means. It's already been done. And I'm giving to you this as proof. Would that be translated into our modern vernacular, more or less the definition of a deed?
Maybe biblical, but not.
Okay, I'm not saying the language is exactly right, but conceptually, a deed means not that this is how we changed ownership, but this proves that ownership has changed.
Right.
I'm holding the deed, not you.
That's not the deed, though. Well, stating that you have given the property over doesn't mean that's a deed. That's just stating that a deed took place. Where is the deed? I
know a deed, an act of legal acquisition took place.
Okay, fine.
The deed could be a third thing.
Where is that act, though? Where is that?
It's not stated in the shtar. There are other means for acquiring real estate. The shtar doesn't say that. Okay, yes?
Well, in the first real estate deal in the Torah, when Abraham buys the cave of Machpelah, he only had witnesses. He didn't really have anything signed on the dotted line. He exchanged money, and he got, right?
We're going to come back to money as a means of acquisition in a minute. I wanted to learn contract first in order to be able to compare and contrast it with money. Okay. All right. Let's move on. V'ashtar tzarich lios okay, now this is very complex, like I told you. We're just getting a luck and a schmack, and I'm going to sidestep some of the major sugyas over here. Okay? Basically, there are three schools of thought. If you have all three, it's wonderful. Okay? If you have written in the seller's own hand, okay, my field is given to you or my field is sold to you, and then you have two kosher witnesses, we the undersigned attest to this, right? And then you have another set of kosher witnesses who see the transfer of the document from seller to buyer. Okay? You could have all three of those elements. You could have one out of three of those elements. You could have none of those elements. But even when all three elements are present, okay, there are different schools of thought, different opinions in the Gemara and the Talmud. What really affects the change of ownership? Okay? There's scriptural sources for how we know that contracts work. Okay? Which element in a contract is it that the Torah held? This is it. This is the essence of the contract. This is the non-negotiable part, the deal breaker. Absent this, you don't have a contract. Do you need the seller's own hand? Do you need two kosher witnesses in the document itself, or do you need two kosher witnesses who saw the transference of the piece of paper or of the piece of pottery or leaf, as the case may be? Okay, and the real famous argument is between which kind of witnesses do you need, and that's called, for those of you who've ever learned Masechtas Gittin, Eide Mesira Karsi, Eide Chasima Karsi. In the contract that effectuates a divorce, Karsi means cut. What causes the cut? What causes the severance? Is it the witnesses that are written into the document, or is it the witnesses that see the transference in the document? And transposing that to real estate law would be the same thing. Which witnesses really count? Who are the witnesses who affect the change of ownership? The ones who sign their names into the document, or the ones who see the document changing hands? Okay, he's not being machri. He's just saying this is a big plunter. These are big areas of great dispute in the Talmud and the Paiskim. Okay, I'm Masechtas Gittin Peval and Rav on Beis Kedushin Chaval and Alf Chavinuson Mem Sif Beis. Uvadavish Yuchel is Dayif Ayin Shamsim Mem Beis Mashnas Bar Ayin Shambasevik says a question. Okay, again, question is on backgrounds like leaves and unkilned pottery. yeah, it's very easy to forge such documents. And it's very easy to erase them and then write whatever you want to write into it. So that's again the whole question in the Paiskim, if that's legal to effectuate this kind of acquisition or not. V'zeh b'matana. So far, everything that we're talking about is where you're gifting a piece of real estate. You're giving it away. You're not selling it away. For whatever reason, you want to give away your real estate. You like the other person. Well, again, we're talking primarily, at least biblical times up till when it was discussed in the Gemara. Nowadays we say it's all about location in terms of real estate. In those days, well, in a certain sense, it may translate into location, but it's only one of the factors. The real issue is fertility. How good a piece of land is this? How easy is it to farm? Is it rocky? Is it soft? Is it rich in nutrients? Is it something that has to be fertilized a lot? Does it get enough wind and rain? Does it not get enough wind and rain? If it's on a mountainside and you've got the terraced crops like grapevines or olives, are the terraces good? Is the drainage good? And so on and so forth. It all breaks down really to two major factors: how fertile is it, and how many years do you have left of the Jubilee? Because the truth of the matter is there are no true real estate sales in the sense of owning something in perpetuity. Okay? In Torah law, at least in the land of Israel, when title is transferred on a piece of land, what it is at most ever is a 49-year lease on the land. Because ultimately, when the 50th year rolls around, the Jubilee year rolls around, your acquired piece of real estate always has to return to the ancestral title holder of this real estate. Okay, whoever in the original homesteading act of the land of Israel, whichever tribe it belongs to, whichever clan within the tribe, whichever family within the clan, whichever individual within the family, him or his heirs, get the piece of land back when the Jubilee year rolls around. Okay, so really it's about fertility and it's about how many years are left until the Jubilee year. Okay. So there could be a lot in an agrarian society and even in a modern society, there could be a lot of reasons why somebody just wants to unload a piece of land. Sometimes they have the goodwill of his heart, and sometimes it's just better for me. It's better for my finances if I cut bait with this particular parcel. Okay? So in such cases, shtar does the trick. Shtar can affect a change of ownership. Aval b'mecher, when it comes to sales, real estate sales, there, you can, if you want to go through with the formality of exchanging a shtar, go right ahead. But there's what we call a lack of smichas das. Smichas das basically means good faith. Look, every kinyan. Let me back up the tape a little bit. There's certain paragraphs, both of the Chinuch and the Minchas Chinuch, that I'm skipping tonight. But one of the things that the Sefer Chinuch talks about, who can do kinyanim? I'm talking about all different types of kinyanim on all different types of property. Who can do kinyanim in the first place? Okay? I don't just mean are you the owner or are you some imposter, claiming to be the owner when you're not. You've got to be what's called a bardas. You have to be a legal consenting adult. You can't be a minor. You can't be a mental incompetent. A minor, I shouldn't paint with such a broad brush. It really depends if the minor is playing the role of the seller or the buyer. But certainly as a seller, you can't be a minor. Right? So, the Talmudic euphemism for this is one must be a bardas. The catch-all term that excludes both a minor and a mental incompetent is a bardas. Somebody has das a certain level of cognition. Okay? And the idea is because you need advice and consent. We said before, basically, so what is a shtar? If a shtar is not worth a pruta, what is it? It's a concrete, physical manifestation of a deal that was made between two people. Right? In some cultures and in some countries and some legal systems, a word, a verbal contract is enough to effectuate a deal. Right? In other cultures, a handshake is enough to do it. I'm told, I've never been one, but I'm told that among Jewish diamond merchants in Antwerp and in the diamond district on 42nd Street, if you say the words Mazel Ubracha, if you ever want to make it in the business, once you said the words Mazel Ubracha, millions of dollars worth of precious stones can be exchanged. Mazel Bracha, good luck and blessing. That's it. And you better stick to your word, or you'll never work in this town again, so to speak. Right? So so the number one, and that's part of the reason why these laws are so complex and in a sense so malleable and so nuanced. What creates the smichas das? What makes my will reciprocally reliant upon your will? When do I willfully give my property away to you? Exchange my property with you? When do you willfully want to receive, want to take my property? Realizing the reciprocal monetary obligation that's now going to be incumbent upon you. Okay, so that concept is on smichas das. Smicha, reliance or leaning das of the intelligence, of the mind, of the will. Okay? So, he says in real estate sales, rather than in gifts, just writing it down on paper, that doesn't cut it. Right? Money has to change hands. That has to be what we're going to come back to in a minute. That has to be what we call a kinyan kesef. That has to be a means of acquisition effectuated by kesef, by money, by currency. As I've written many times, says Minchas Chinuch, I'm not a halacha sefer, detailed laws. It's not my wont, it's not my habit to write it in this book, in this composition. But to just tell you the general concept, the shtar have a kinyan min hatayra. Shtar is a kinyan, a means of acquisition that works on a Torah level and it's sourced in the Torah itself. It's not a rabbinic construct. It's something from the Torah itself. Mikna, that's called a shtar of kinyan, of acquisition. The ein yichal lachzer, that nobody can back out once such a shtar is exchanged. Kigain shekana b'shtar v'asad shayach lekayach. Such that if you acquire with the shtar, then the sod in the field now belongs to the taker, the new owner, the gift receiver, according to what he just said before. Okay, this is talking about, again, it's a complex sugya. It's called Mila Le Memser L'Shliach. Words are not something that you can have agency for. What happens if you have a middleman? If you don't write, he illustrated the case where the seller of the field himself writes in the document, my field is sold to you. What happens if he talks to three people and he says, listen, I want one of you to write it and two of you to sign it, right? And you say, the field of Ruvain is going to be sold to Shimon. Okay? Does that work or not? Can you have agency like that? Okay, when you have agency, listen, I wrote up the shtar, I want you to run it over to Shimon and put it into his hands. For that you can have power of attorney. For that you can have what we call a shliach, an agent. But Omer Imru, but where the guy just told somebody, say to somebody, that's already questionable. Shtar matana by Imru v'zeh shayach gam b'shtar mecher and b'shtar makna. And who writes a liknes b'shtar luchud. Okay, so he seems to be contradicting what he says before. He wants to say that if both sides agree that the means of acquisition will be a shtar, absent any money, so Torah, such a thing works. That the shtar is kinda, we learn it from a pasuk. I took the book of sale. Okay, and I don't know exactly what a deed is in modern real estate law. You listening, Stan? I don't know exactly what a deed is, but he's distinguishing in halakha the difference between a shtar makna and a shtar raya. A shtar raya is a shtar that's used as proof. Of proof of some other kinyan.
That's what a deed is?
I'm not sure if that's what a deed is. I think a deed just says so-and-so is the owner of the property. Yeah. How he came into possession of this property, I don't think it says that in the deed.
No.
Okay. Is it the same thing as a title? Is a deed and a title the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
The same.
Are you an attorney?
No, I do a lot of that type of work.
You work for a recording company
I used to do
for an abstract company?
insurance.
Okay, whatever. Fine. So a deed is even less than what we're talking about over here. A shtar raya, would be, right?
You could have a contract to sell. You may not get to the selling stage, but it's a...
Oh yeah, I know modern real estate law is different between going to contract and going to closing. Right? That's something different. Okay. I don't think that the concept exists altogether. Maybe I don't know. I don't remember. I bought one house in my life. I don't know exactly what. I know I signed 1 million papers at the closing. If you ask me, what I was signing my life away to over there, I'm just happy nobody with horns asked me to dip a fountain pen in my own blood. That's all I'm happy. Although I feel that way sometimes, just paying my mortgage every month, Okay. Anyway, getting back to the subject hand, let's get to the halach terminology. There's a shtar makna and there's a shtar raya. A shtar of acquisition and a shtar of proof. Shtar of proof would be, some kind of a legal document that says, this property changed hands. How did it change hands? Not with this piece of paper. It changed hands with a kinyan kesef, or a kinyan chazaka, with a kinyan chalipin, with a kinyan sudar. Changed hands. Okay? But the shtar that we've been discussing up until now, that has the nusach, that has the verbiage, sadai mechur lecha, sadai nasun lecha, my field is sold to you, my field is given to you, that's a shtar makna, where that piece of paper itself, or leaf, or shard of pottery itself, affected the change of ownership. Okay? What difference does it make? What's the difference between the two? Because that's what's learned out from Dakar from Makna. There are many differences, but one of the differences is as follows. A shtar, that you're using the shtar, okay, so for lack of confusion's sake, let's go with something that's unanimous. You're giving away a piece of land. You're not selling a piece of land. You're giving away a piece of land, and you're doing it by putting into the gift recipient's hands a document. You, the former owner of this piece of land, gives them a piece of paper or a leaf or a pottery shard that says, I, Reuven, am giving you this parcel of land, Queens County, lot 58, block 15. I'm giving it to you. All right, signed so-and-so. Those so-and-so better not be Gentiles. Those so-and-so have to be Jews. Okay? Or, as the case may be, if they're 4 eyes, if they're 2 pairs of eyes, seeing this piece of paper change hands from moving to Shimon, those 2 guys better be Jews. They better not be Gentiles. Such a shtar is ineffective if the witnesses are non-Jews. The lav shtar rayu el shtar makna. It's not a shtar that's proving anything. It's a shtar that, I should say, it's doing more than proving. It's affecting. It is causing the change of title. All right? We have it biblically that this institution, this halachic legal construct, called a shtar, to affect a change of real estate property ownership, is something that is beyond the scope of non-Jews. It's something that only works from one Jew to another. All right? So if you want to use another means of acquisition, and all the piece of paper says is on this and this date, Reuven gifted a parcel of land, whatever, again, Queens County, block this, lot that, right, to Shimon, using the method known as barter, symbolic barter with a handkerchief, right? Son John McCormick and Luigi Giuliano, that would be fine, right? But if the shtar itself says, with this piece of paper, I hereby transfer this field to you, gift this field to you, then it's got to be 2 Jewish witnesses to be kosher. And again, if the witnesses we're talking about are the ones who were signed into it and the ones who observe the piece of paper changing hands, that's the argument of Eda Masir Kasi or Eda Chasima Kasi. Okay, now that I've thoroughly confused you about contracts, I hope it's not too confusing. Just a few facts, a few basic facts of how contracts work. Now let's take a look at cash and begin to do a little comparison and contrast. Back to the first page of the handout. Torah Anytime Observers, page Taf Kuf Yud Ches. Okay, the Aleph in the Minchas Chinuch, which is the third paragraph. There's a one-line paragraph. It's the second paragraph. For those of you here, the way I numbered it on the handout, it's number 2, paragraph number 2. Kasef Keitzad. How does money work if you want to buy land? Well, you would think it's pretty normal, right? You've been to a lot of real estate clauses. It's very simple. You have $1.5 million, beautiful split level ranch on 68th and Main, right? The bank from whom the buyer is taking out a mortgage cuts a check for $1.5 million to the seller. The seller receives that check, and that's how the real estate deal is closed. No? Right?
Just about.
That pretty much, maybe I'm oversimplifying, but essentially that's how it works. Right? Paying off that debt, that's between the buyer and the bank. The seller's out of that picture already. Seller got his money. He certainly doesn't own this property anymore. It's either the buyer or the bank. The bank has a lien on the property. If the buyer is going to default on his mortgage payments, the bank will foreclose and the bank will take over title. And that's all built into the mortgage, that's built into the closing papers, right? That's how it works in the modern world. Now let's take a look at how it works in the Talmudic world. Kasef Keitzad. Notzim le pruta eshava pruta ba'ad hakarka kana hakarka. If the buyer gives a pruta, a very minimal coin. We were discussing shtar being less than a shava pruta. But a pruta itself is no great fortune. I said at the beginning of Shir that I said once a pruta is about a quarter. Again, I have no idea what it is today based on the fluctuation and the explosion of the value of precious metals over the last several years, and the bunker hunt cornering the world silver market. I don't know. Well, let's say it's $5. Let's say it's $25. Let's be a sport. Let's say a pruta today with inflation, with hyperinflation, is $250.
Is that a lira, a pruta?
No.
Oh, it's much
In modern Israel, in the modern state of Israel, there was a time when they minted a coin called a pruta, I believe. Right?
Yeah.
The other times when they called lirot shkolim, sometimes they were called Israeli pounds right after the British mandate, when the state of Israel was still young and people were still calling it Palestine, and so on. Okay, back to the topic at hand over here. Okay, so let's be a big sport. Let's say that a pruta today is $250. Okay, it says here in the Minchas Chinuch, and he's getting it from the Gemara. Okay, that if I want to buy a $250 piece of real estate and I give $250, the real estate is now mine, right? But it also says here that if I want to buy a $500, a $5,000, a $50,000, a $50 million piece of real estate, and I give my $250, it's mine. No bank has to cut the seller a check. If I give the seller a pruta, and he agrees to sell me the real estate is now mine. Title transfer is immediate. It is not contingent upon the seller receiving full compensation for the worth of his real estate.
But
how's that? But what?
Will you still owe him the rest of it?
What do you say?
I say, it says yes. He has.
What do you say?
If it's stated in the act of taking the pruta that the amount I'm looking for is X amount of dollars, then there's a difference.
Okay, what's the difference?
Has to be paid. Difference is probably the mortgage has to go for the bank.
Okay. The bank mortgages are a fairly recent invention. By fairly recent, I mean even if they're 600 years old, they're still fairly recent. Okay, let's read on a little bit. Okay? The dafka shava pruta, it's got to be a shava pruta. Aval pachas b'shava pruta eina mammon b'dina atayr v'eina kaina. Less than a shava pruta, whether you're dealing with a coin, whether you're dealing with commodity, in place of coin, Bottom line is, if what you're putting into the hands, if you, the buyer, are putting into the hands of the seller something that's worth less than a shava pruta, the deal is no deal. It could be a big volume. It could be giving 20 gallons of milk. If milk is cheap these days and it goes for less than a shava pruta, deal, no deal. Either side can back out legally. Vain la'el parts mishpatim havesi I've already cited this earlier in my work in Parts Mishpatim, but we're not learning Parts Mishpatim now, we're learning it here. Very, very interesting machlokes between the Sma and the Taz, two of the great, nice account, two of the great commentaries printed on the page of the Shulchan Aruch. A Chakira, a Londisha theory, a legal theory argument of how Kinyan Kesef works. How do we look at it? The Das Asma, the opinion of the Sma is the Eina Kaina El B'Tayus Shivu Yamekach. A pruta is a down payment. Okay? The way Kinyan Kesef works is, I'm buying the piece of property for $2 million. Let's pick a number out of our hat. I'm buying a $2 million piece of real estate. Okay? The first payment is a pruta. Exactly how we're going to work out the payments and what kind of a term we're going to have, I guess we would call this, in modern day parlance, a privately financed mortgage. You're not getting the bank as the lien holder, the seller himself is the lien holder. Right? A debt is created when you guys make up that the sale price of this property is $2 million, and both the seller and the buyer agree to that sale price. Right? The second the seller puts a pruta, for simplicity's sake, let's call it 25 cents. Yeah? He puts a quarter into the palm of the seller. I'm the new owner. We can, if there's a title recorder out there, he can change the name on the title right now. Okay? But the way the Sma understands the way Kinyan Kesef works is, no, Kinyan Kesef is for full worth. You're buying the piece of real estate for $2 million. But the first quarter is enough. The first quarter already has a lack of significance. But of course, it's only part of the full payment for the property, which is the $2 million. This was your first very small, very nominal payment. Question?
So why do you say that the seller maintains a lien on the property if when he gives the money over, the property gets transferred completely to him?
That's conditional.
What's going to happen, Lamaisa, if he doesn't come up with the rest of the $2 million minus a quarter? What's going to happen to the property then?
I mean,
Won't the seller be able to foreclose?
Maybe not.
No. How can the buyer hold on to the property if he didn't pay for the property in full? If the Sma is learning that the way Kinyan Kesef works is you pay the full value. I mean, it's like our modern concept of currency and payment for anything. I mean, you go into a store, okay, they're not real estate. You're buying metal, you're buying movable objects, okay? Go into an electronics store, you go into your grocer, right? Unless you have a layaway plan, right, or unless the guys keep a credit tab on you, okay? You buy a pound of oranges for 30 cents and you just put 25 cents on the counter. The guys aren't not going to let you walk out of the store. Right?
Right.
Okay. It doesn't work that way with Karka. He's going to let you walk out of the store, so to speak, right? But it doesn't change the fact that the Kinyan, the theory behind the Kinyan is the same as buying a pound of apples or oranges or a big screen TV in your electronics store.
So where
the concept is the same.
Of the sale outlined, where are they?
There's no documentation.
Wow.
So it's a trust thing.
It's a handshake.
Well,
or a trust. Let's say trust. That's dangerous.
Well, maybe a smart guy wouldn't do this without Adam. Wouldn't do it without witnesses to the verbal conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you're going to run into big problems.
Why?
I'll tell you why. What happens if the seller and the buyer come to Bezdin with the following dispute? The seller says, I sold this guy a piece of property for $2 million, okay? And he's only delivered a pruta so far. I want my property back. Or I want the $2 million.
That's what I'm saying. It's the buyer's property already.
Right. So the buyer says, he's lying. Right?
There's witnesses.
He only sold it to me for $100, right? There's no witnesses.
Oh,
What happens then?
it's a different story.
Well, okay, what is the different story? You know what the law is in that case?
Yeah, whoever's living on the land, I guess, is the...
No, there's no dispute.
How do you prove that?
There's no dispute between the buyer and the seller who the current title holder is.
Okay.
The dispute is the amount of money owed.
So how do you prove that you're the title holder?
Huh?
How do you prove that you're the title holder?
I don't have to prove it. The seller admitted it.
There's no dispute.
No, no dispute.
The dispute is over how much?
The buyer admits he owes only $100.
Okay.
The buyer's property.
So, if it wouldn't be karka, if it would be metaltalin, I would know the law. By karka, I don't remember the law off the top of my head. If it would be diamonds and not a piece of real estate, then this is a classic iteration of what we call maidim and mixas hatayna. Maidim mixas hatayna is the rule in that case is that absent any witnesses, the nittin, the defendant in the lawsuit, would have to swear that what he is saying is true. If he swears, he wins the case. If he fails to swear, even if he starts getting pious on you and saying, well, I'm telling you the truth 100%, but thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain is one of the 10 commandments. I cry by Kol Nidre every year by Yom Kippur. I always make a habit of saying B'li Neder whenever I say anything. Nadarim, oaths, promises, they're terrible, they're awesome things. I'm telling the truth, but I'm not willing to swear to it. You lose the case. Swear or you lose. That's the law.
He's a lawyer.
By karka, there's something called an ishmael case. Yeah, let's say he's a lawyer. A bold-faced lawyer.
He'll swear.
What?
If he's a liar, he'll swear. It wouldn't matter.
He's got to deal with Shemayim now.
Yeah.
But the difference is that in those days, at least,
Right.
the people, from what I remember, swearing, making a shavua, carried a much bigger weight than just.
Forget about the swearing, making sure. The Gemara asks your question even before we get to the level of swearing, or I should say the stage of swearing in such a case. The Gemara says, it's so easy for the guy to lie. Why should I assume he's telling the truth? Right? So whatever. The Gemara has a whole psychoanalysis of the dynamic of a plaintiff and the defendant. On the one hand, we say that a guy wouldn't have a chutzpah to lie totally. Yeah. On the other hand, he's stalling for time. He's got a cash flow problem, and that's why, if he'd be what we call a kaifer hakol, if he'd say, you're full of baloney, I never bought this piece of land from you, this was my Zayda's land and I inherited it. Or if he would say, you low down liar, I gave you the full $2 million cash up front, what are you talking about? Okay? Then we don't require him to take an oath. The reason that it happens to be learned from a pasuk that when he concedes part of the claim, maidim mixas hatayna, it's called in Hebrew, we make him take an oath, is derived from sukkim in the Torah. Nevertheless, although it's derived from sukkim, the Gemara forwards this psychoanalysis. Okay. The reason why he's not he would like to deny it totally, right? But lechutz to finish, people don't have such chutzpah to tell such bold-faced lies and to dish such dirt to somebody who did them a good turn, somebody who did them a favor. Whether he gave it to a gift or whether he sold it to you, obviously you want that piece of land. It's still a favor. That's still the other guy's doing something nice to you.
And they believe
right?
the lie sometimes.
Right?
Yeah.
So he would like to deny it totally, but he's not going to deny it totally because that would take too much chutzpah. That brassy he isn't, right? On the other hand, why don't we believe him completely? If you say if people don't have the chutzpah to lie to those who did them a favor, say he's probably telling the truth. If the other guy says I lent you $100, he says no, it was only 50. The guy who says 50 is probably telling the truth. He says no, he's not telling the truth. The reason he's only saying 50 is he knows the truth is 100, but he has to stall for time. On hand right now he only has 50. Doesn't have the 100. He's got a cash flow problem, so he's stalling. Right? So this is the basic psychoanalysis of why we say it's incumbent upon him to take a shvur. Now, it is a case of karka sales, I seem to recall, Gemara says, Ein nishman al karkais, when it comes to land, there is no shvur, maidim mixas or shvur seid echad, which is another case. In any event, let the Sma finish speaking. Let's get to the theoretical argument over here. But anyway, we're developing the idea. The theory of the Sma is that every shava pruta that effectuates a change of title, it's a kinyan, it's a mean of acquisition. The way it works is a down payment. The real Kenyan is the full amount of money that you're going to forward to this guy. But you don't have to pay the full value before title change takes effect. The first significant value that's exchanged, and halachically significant, the minimum share is a shava pruta. The first shava pruta that you give, that's what does the trick. The das asma, the ena kain elabatar shivui hamekach. Kesef only works in the value of the sale. He gave him the pruta as payment, as compensation for the real estate being acquired. And the rest he's taking as a mortgage, taking as a loan. Okay? I now owe you $2 million minus a pruta. I owe it to you. Right? Or is the way we look at it as follows. There are those who dissent from the Sma. He's now, I think, articulating the sheet of the Taz. And he says, no, the way I look at it is like this. The whole deal, the whole real estate deal, any real estate deal, no matter what the value of the real estate is bought with a shava pruta. You're not exchanging currency value for land value. It's not a standardized form of barter. Okay? Basically, what is currency? Yeah, currency. It's an amazing thing. Money makes the world go round. Yeah, but when you really think about it, money is such a mishigas. Like, who says this isn't Confederate money? Who says this isn't monopoly money? Why is this worth anything? Right? And we talk about consumer confidence, and you talk about international currency exchange. When there's a volcanic eruption, or when Wall Street has a bad day, the dollar can take a hit versus the yen. But the whole thing, the yen, the dollar, the pound sterling, it's all the Russian ruble, the euro. It's all really a deck of cards when you stop to think about it. It's really the social contract. Enough meshugayim, enough lunatics got together and decided that I don't care if there is bullion to back this up, if there isn't bullion to back this up. I worship greenbacks, and everyone respects it, from heads of state to drug dealers in Colombia. Everybody worships the almighty buck, right? It's really insane, right? But the way coins and currency started was ancient economies were all barter economies, right? I've got a cow, I have many cows. Milk, I have plenty. Yeah, I need a mule. I need a pack animal to move my milk into the city where I can sell it. My neighbor has a mule. Yeah, I'll swap you my cow for your mule. What do you mean? A cow has so much more meat. A cow you can shecht, and you can get some steaks out of it at the end. It doesn't matter for my utility, for what I need right now. Yeah, I don't care if there'd be a disparity, straight up on the livestock market. For me, they're worth whatever they're worth. For me, they're of equal value. Let's swap my cow for you.
2 mules for a cow.
Let's swap my cow for your mule. Right? Yeah, okay. If one mule wasn't enough, yeah. It might have to be 2 mules. It might have to be 3 mules. It might have to be 5 cows. Depends what, it's all about supply and demand. It depends what they need more of. Transportation or milk, so to speak. Yeah? Or meat, as the case may be, if we're talking a kosher consumer. Fine. Having said all that, all right? What is even precious metal? And what is gold? And what is silver? I mean, it's pretty in jewelry.
It's malleable.
What? Yeah, what real utility does it have? Why didn't it turn out to be steel? Why didn't it turn out to be aluminum? I don't know. I mean, the Kabbalists talk about
rarity. The supply was little. They put a value on it.
Can't find too much of it.
So what?
Yes.
Was there ever an economy that used pearls or diamonds as currency? Those are even rarer than gold and silver, right? If that's what it was all about, so then it all should have been with precious gemstones. Bottom line is, that's a commodity, that's not currency. Basically, currency started off, at least, as a substitute for barter, as a universally agreed upon, unit of worth. A liquid, universally recognized, non-negotiable. A dollar is a dollar is a dollar. Okay, a dollar can be inflated. A dollar can fall or rise against other currencies, but a dollar is a dollar. Yeah. So the Taz, who argues on the Sema, says, no, that's not how currency works. It's not a more advanced or more standardized form of barter. That I'm swapping you the full amount of the real estate for the full amount of compensation. Okay? If nobody would have invented things called shekels or rupees or eventually dollars, yeah? So I'd be asking for 10 5-carat diamonds from you. I'd be asking for 500 head of cattle from you. Whatever. But essentially, we're swapping worth for worth. Right? And I'll settle that right now for a down payment. But the acquisition, the means of acquisitions, the reason I let go of my title, yeah, is because I'm going to get full compensation back. Right? The Taz says that's not how it works. Right? Millions of dollars worth of real estate, you buy it completely with the Shavapruta. Shavapruta is not your down payment. Shavapruta is your only payment. I mean, it's not even a payment. Payment is the wrong word. Payment connotes compensation. It's not a payment. It's a Torah recognized means of acquisition. A shtar has certain specs. A shtar has to have certain words written on it. Has to have Jewish witnesses, we learned, right? According to some, it has to have written witnesses. According to others, it has to have witnesses to the transference of the piece of paper. A shtar has certain specs. Kesef has certain specs. Unlike a shtar, Kesef has a spec that it has to have a minimal amount of market worth. It has to be a pruta. Shtar doesn't need to be a pruta. A coin, a Kesef, or commodity being used in lieu of Kesef has to be at least a pruta. But the pruta is it. The pruta does the whole kinyan. The same way the shtar does the whole kinyan, and compensation is a separate cheshbon, right? We understand it very well in shtaris. If shtaris work at all, yeah, we understand that the kinyan is one matter, and the compensation that you owe for the thing that you bought is a separate matter. Assuming that shtar works in mecher, right? We had a line or two in the Minchas Chinuch that said that shtar only works for matana on karka. But let's assume for a moment that you can sell a piece of real estate using a shtar, right? So we understand very well that shtar is worthless. It's not worth the paper or the leaf or the shard of pottery it's written on. Worth is beside the point. Shtar had certain specs for how to exchange title on a piece of land. This is one of them. And the compensation will be a separate matter. The Taz learns that Kesef works the same way. That pruta is not the first pruta of gazillions of prutas until they accumulate to the worth of $2 million. No. The pruta is it. It's the be-all and the end-all of the kinyan. Yes, it has to be a pruta. Can't be less than a pruta. But that's it. And the compensation, again, is a totally separate matter.
But he agrees there is going to be some kind of a thing where he owes him the money at the end.
It's a sale, isn't it? It's not a gift. That's the definition. That's the defining difference between a sale and a gift. Of course he owes him the money. Right? The question is, how do you look at that first pruta? Is the first pruta... you want to know the first practical nafkamina? Okay? After you give him the first pruta, do you owe him $2 million or do you owe him $2 million minus a pruta? How's that for a difference? Very simple difference. According to the Shema, you owe him $2 million minus a pruta. Okay? According to the Taz, you owe him $2 million. No minus a pruta. The pruta wasn't a down payment. The pruta is how we changed title. It was a kinyan. It was a means of acquisition. But he's going to say another nafkamina very good.
A handshake. There's no money changing hands. It's just a means by which to.
That's exactly what we're trying to get at tonight. The means of changing ownership is
by giving this,
in the Talmudic jargon kinyanim. We are learning about kinyanim tonight, right? And this is a kinyan. Let's read on a little bit.
Why can't you use a? How does that have to be a pruta? Why can't it be a rock or
they have to make some kind of thing, a measure.
What kind of a rock? Is it a flint or is it a diamond?
Or anything? It could be a.
It could be as long
as shava pruta.
If it's a shava pruta and you're stipulating that you're doing a kinyan kesef and not a kinyan chalipin, kinyan chalipin has to dafka be a kli, has to be a useful implement.
A pen.
But if you have something that's utterly useless, it has no utility, but it still inheres a value of a shava pruta, yeah. Whenever we say kesef, shava kesef is just as good, right? Women are acquired with kesef, right? You ever been to a Jewish wedding? You're putting the ring on the finger. That's a kinyan kesef. Anybody ever gave a woman a coin? In theory, he could, but that's not the minhag. Yeah. The ring is shava kesef, but the name of the kinyan is a kinyan kesef. It's not chalipin, it's not barter, it's not swap, it's a kinyan kesef. Okay. It's actually a good segue for the Taz. We'll see in a minute. Where am I here? I lost it already. Aval. Be'emein neitzen loy b'shvil shiva mekach. Al shoneitzen loy pruta. Sher pruta zu nishtabdu she'encham lachse behem. K'may shtar v'chazaka kin yisuda. I'm sorry. I have to start reading again. I lost my train of thought here. I'm starting from I. Okay, the Sma said what he said, and now he's going to introduce the dissenting opinion, which is of the Taz. Shekol ha-mekach ein shav el pruta. The whole mekach is only worth a pruta. Al bim ein neitzen loy b'shvil shiva mekach. If he ends up defaulting and not giving him money or commodity, that compensation for the worth of the thing that was acquired, El shanaisim like pruta, he gives them a pruta. Sher pruta zu nishtabdu. Through this pruta, they became indebted to one another. She'enim yichayim lachse behem. They cannot back out of the deal anymore. It's not just a verbal agreement anymore. Once you give them the pruta, this is it. The deal is done. Kamashtar v'chazaka v'kinyan suda loy mahani. The nilmad mistay efren. Ube'efren haya demei shivu yasada. You know something? I'm reading this all wrong. I'm sorry. I apologize to you. Too many interruptions to explain in the middle. This is all still the Sma talking, yeah, saying why those who dissent from him are wrong. Well, let me read it again. I need to read it with a different nusach. My director is in the cutting room at any time. Maybe want to back up the tape and cut out the last 3 minutes, or if they don't, if somebody ever actually watches this on the internet,
every minute
that's right. Right, I'm assuming too much. I may be also jumping to a tremendous conclusion that anybody is ever actually going to see this on the World Wide Web and get this far in this year. All right, we'll see. Okay, let me reread this. I read this with the wrong niggin and the wrong nusach. Let's start again from the Das Asma. The Das Asma, the Enakain B'tar Shiva Yamekach. The Sma's opinion is that you do not acquire karka other than with the full worth of the deal, of the sale. A, one permutation of a kinyan kesef for karka, for real estate, b'shava pruta, would be that you're buying a very valuable piece of property, $100 worth, $100,000 worth, $1 million worth. The first down payment that you give is the pruta. V'hashar zakafol of $1 million. The rest gets set upon you through a loan. We call real estate loans of this type today mortgages, except this would be an owner finance mortgage. Or another example of a kinyan kasef would be shekol and a shavel pruta. The guy's selling you a 4-inch by 4-inch piece of land for whatever reason. You need some place to hide your nickels, so you bought a 4-inch square piece of land, right? That's your buried treasure. The whole piece of land is only worth a shav pruta. Then a shav pruta can work because you're giving the full compensation. Yeah. You're not giving your first pruta for the worth that inheres in the piece of real estate that you're buying, either in full compensation for a very small or worthless piece of land, or as a down payment for a more worthwhile piece of land if you're not doing it that way. You're giving the pruta in such a way that it's more than just a negotiation, it's more than just a verbal agreement, it's more than just, somebody mentioned earlier, a handshake. No, there's a means of kinyan. We're meshubit to one another. We owe one another. You owe to deliver title to me on this piece of real estate and to vacate the land immediately, yeah? And I owe you the money for the land, right? But this money was not a down payment. This money was just the kinyan. What does it mean? How can money changing hands be just the kinyan and not be part of a compensation? I'll give you an illustration. We have 3 other forms of kinyanim for real estate that have nothing to do with compensation. On the same level and working the same way as shtar, which we've already learned clearly that it doesn't have to be worth a shava pruta, yeah, or chazaka or kinyan suda. I'm not going to define those terms right now, I'll confuse it too much, but suffice it to say that it's not chazaka and kinyan suda are not the beginnings of the compensation, the beginnings of the payment for land. And yet they work to change title. They're kinyanim. Yeah? They're symbolic acts, if you want to call it. So I hate that word symbolism. They're legally binding, valid acts that change ownership, that affect the change in ownership. Loi mahani, it would not work for kesef. Maybe those three kinds of acquisitions work that way. But kesef does not work that way, says the Sma. Kesef has got to be compensation. And if the full value of the land exceeds the Shavah Pruta, then we got to look at this first Shavah Pruta as a down payment. But it's payment towards the ultimate full payment for this land. Why? As Ed said earlier, the Nilman Mistay Ephraim. The way that we learn out that Kinyan Kesef works is from Avram Avinu buying burial real estate from Ephraim Achiti, and he meted out to the guy 400 shekel for the Marasa Machpelah, for the cave of Machpelah, as a burial site for his wife Sarah. Right? So there the money was clearly compensation. That's what was going on. Ephraim wanted the full value of the land. Okay, we don't need the shear of 400 shkolim. The shear is Allah Moshe Sinai, the minimum amount that it has to be. All right, but the understanding, the consensual theory behind this change of title of Machpelah from Ephraim to Abraham was that you're compensating me for the full value of the land. Vataz Hisigala, the Taz argues on him. The Gam B'Chagab the Mahani, even in such a way, even if you're trying to use Kesef in precisely the same theoretical manner that you would use Shtar or Chazaka or Sudar, contract or demonstration of ownership or symbolic barter, okay? If you try to do it that way, it does work. Earlier in Parshas Mishpatim, I had a whole pilpul about this. For right now, I'm going to say is I have a little bit of a question on the Smaz approach. Why? The Be'emes Kinyan Kesef and Nilman Mistay Ephraim El Mistay Misadas Bekesef Yiknu Ankedush Chavav Amalaf Tashram the Ramas Lama. That was only what we call a Havamim in the Gemara. The Gemara's first approach of how we know Kinyan Kesef works is Kicha Mistay Ephraim. You learn it out from the fields of Ephraim, from the fields of Machpelah. But after the dust settled, what we call the Maskana, the concluding approach to the Gemara is there's a different pasuk, there's a different scriptural source for how we know that Kesef works. So Amdu Bazeh, Lomalo Yafim Mistay Ephraim, V'tirtzu Shani Nachri, whatever. Has to do with, again, the difference between sales between one Jew and another Jew, a sale between a Jew and a non-Jew. As we already saw in Shtaris, they can have different rules and regulations, different specs. Im came Misadas Bekesef, Efsher Shavah Pruta, Kamashmois, Kesef B'chol Tara, Hainu Kesef Kinyan. If so, the other pasuk that's not dealing with Ephraim Achiti, who wanted his full 400 shekel, just the words of the Torah, Sados Bekesef Yiknu, you shall buy fields with money. So Kesef means what Kesef means all over Torah Shavah Pruta, just the way of effectuating a Kinyan. Hainu Kesef Kinyan, Achzor Yisi B'Bach Gam Shehisagol B'Zeh. I just want to share with you, we'll call it a night after this, the actual words of the Taz when he's arguing on this month about this. This is a Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat, Siman Kuf Tzadik. Where's the Taz? Where does the Taz start? Yeah. Mashakaz Smas of Kot Nalef. The Kol Shalai Nasam B'Tairas Shiva Mekach Enakaina. If you're not giving it as compensation for the full worth of the land, that's not a Kinyan. Lo Ivanti Dvarav. I don't understand. Because Ramah Simeon Zion Bam Revuv Yika and Konako. Void Hagam Gabi Kinyan the Isha because of Nilman Ephraim. What's this whole thing? What's this whole leg to stand on? I'm learning it out of Ephraim. And Ephraim wanted the full 400 shekel as compensation for his land. 1 second. We learn out that you effectuate marriage with Kesef. We learn out of Ephraim too. Is anyone going to say that the ring that you put on a woman's finger is a down payment for a full worth? Preposterous. All right? The Kesef can effectuate Kedushin, Kesef can just forget it, let it fly away. Kesef can effectuate marriage, right? But it has nothing to do with, well, I'm worth X amount of dollars, yeah? I'll let it go with a down payment, but you'll owe me, we'll be married, God willing, 50 years. Through the 50 years, I will have received, goods and services for you equaling. No, that's not how marriage works. Marriage is initiated with kesef, but it doesn't work as a down payment towards compensation. So why should we assume that it works that way in real estate? That's the Taz's chief question on this ma. Okay, we'll continue.